There's a rising pandemic of loneliness and isolation around the world. A new report that was published here in the UK shows that half of Britons are suffering from a form of loneliness and isolation and depression as a direct result this Christmas in 2024. As somebody who's been through this problem multiple times, as a tech entrepreneur, as a pro athlete, but also as a teenager in a very, very dark place, I want to share with you my story, but also more importantly, the steps that you can take to avoid falling into depression and ideally even getting yourself out of loneliness and isolation. It's not going to be easy, but together, let's make it happen.
You are listening to CEO Retort.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of the CEO Retort. I'm your host, Tim El-Sheikh, and today I think this is going to be a bit of a difficult one for me because I'm going to be sharing with you some personal stories that I've never done publicly before, because few reports emerged that really made me very upset this week about the rise of loneliness and isolation around the world amongst people of all ages, but especially amongst young men. Now, I did say in some of my announcements on LinkedIn, for example, that, part of this mission of the podcast is to effectively, I want to take down the manosphere. And this is not me attacking the young men who are basically been dragged into the manosphere, but really the people who push the manosphere onto them. As far as I'm concerned, it's radicalization of young men. And I sympathize with them because I can tell you, as a teenager at the time, back in the day when I was about 17, I was in a very, very dark place. And I'm going to talk to you a bit more about that. And I honestly think that I would have fallen into that trap as well if the opportunity was there. But going back to the whole loneliness situation, there's so many reasons why loneliness tends to happen. And I did study neurobiology and neuropsychology as well, a little bit as part of my medical science degree, but it wasn't my area of expertise. So I will be sharing a lot of research and data with you in the description below as we go along with this podcast. But ultimately, what happens with isolation, there's always a major event that tends to happen in your life that effectively rips you away from your family or your friends, be it a new career path or, for example, children that have been going to school together for many, many years. And then, they finish school and then they all got dispersed into various different universities or apprenticeships in different locations around the world. And it has a huge impact on how people interact with other people. And in fact, I want to invite you to think about how you felt after the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, post-lockdown. You see, I don't know, you guys can tell me if you had the same sort of feeling, but when the lockdown was over and we were allowed to go out, for some reason I felt nervous. I didn't feel excited, which is kind of weird, but I felt nervous. And even when I went to see some of my friends and stuff, of course, we haven't seen each other for months and months because of the lockdowns. In the UK, we had really, really long lockdowns because of the government's screw up. But it felt like as if there was some kind of a barrier between me and my friends. I haven't seen this person for such a long time. I don't know what to do. But this is what happens when you isolate yourself. This is what happens when you sit in your room or in your house for many months, years even, as we're seeing in Japan. I mean, of course, these are extreme examples, but isolation is something that can happen without you even realizing. And it happened to me because, for example, with my family, my father was a very successful engineer. We lived a very, very privileged life, and we basically lived in different countries. By the time I was 18, I visited and been to 28 countries or something like that, which is an amazing experience, of course. But at the same time, I tell people that I don't have childhood friends. I've never had childhood friends. All of my closest friends today are people that I met when I was about 17, 18, because that was the period where I left home. And that was the period where I actually experienced the first sort of horrible experience of isolation and darkness. I'm not going to bore you with the details. It's family stuff, but generally it was a situation whereby I felt that the life that I was living at the time was not the life that I wanted. And for me, the kind of thought process that went through my mind was that if that life does not change it, I don't want it. Now, trigger warning, I did not consider ending it or anything like that. That did not cross my mind, thankfully. But you can see the trajectory of that thought process. It's like, this is not my life. I don't want it. And if it doesn't change, I'm not going to want to live it. It was getting there. But the other thing as well, family has a huge responsibility here too. Because you see, one of the reasons why I tell people that I'm not a big fan of the, being surrounded by the top echelons very much, because that's where I come from. I grew up in that. And it's all just a facade. People want to show off, who's got the latest cars and who's got the latest Rolexes or whatever. And it's just, keeping up with the Joneses. And I hated it. I don't know why I hated it. I always have. I thought it was ridiculous. It was stupid. I still do today. And because my family were so much into that, I was literally an embarrassment for my family. So think about that as a 17-year-old when you're told by your parents that, we need to do something to basically cover up the embarrassment. And the cover up was basically for them to let me leave home, which is kind of interesting. I mean, think of it as if you're a prisoner and the prison officer comes to you, says, you know what? You're such a troublemaker. I don't like you. Here's the key. Get the fuck out. I think as a prisoner, you'll be like, all right, cool. Thank you. So it was an opportunity. So interestingly, despite the fact, imagine, as a teenager, you get told something like that. But then at the same time, I suppose I had a positive mindset, kind of weirdly, very quickly turned into a positive mindset where I was like, oh my God, actually, if I'm leaving, that means I can create the life that I do want to have. So for that, I am actually grateful for my parents, and please don't judge my parents. I mean, I think it's a generational thing. Maybe if I were in their shoes, maybe I would have done the same. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to bore you with the full story because that's not the point. The point is that because I was given that opportunity to start over, as it were, on my own, and of course my parents did help me. It's not like they completely left me out there dry. I mean, they gave me the money and all the stuff, so it wasn't a hard experience per se financially. But definitely, it was a lonely experience because I left. This is how I moved to the UK, and I had no friends. I had nobody. It was just me. But at the same time, I was really, really happy. I was really, really happy because even the lifestyle was so like I lived like a very humble lifestyle. From being in a 5-star luxury lifestyle to being in the UK as a student, living in a tiny flat with a small room. And a very small room. That was it. That was my life. But it was cool, man. It was amazing. However, I had to very quickly then figure out, okay, I need to get to know people. I had to get out there and get to know people. Now, the thing that really did save me, which is the reason why I love it so much, is sports. I've been involved in sports my entire life. That's another thing that my parents gifted me, and I'm forever going to be grateful for that. Is the fact that I started with martial arts when I was about 5 years old. I even competed, I fought, etc. But I discovered my true passion in basketball. And I had lots of circles of different people, not close friends, but players that we got along, of course, because I trained in different countries, I trained in different clubs and so on. So I have basically met different people. They weren't friends, but I did get along really well. So for me, the first thing had to be was, how can I get into basketball in the UK? And the UK is not very well known for good basketball, but nonetheless, I didn't care. And very quickly I did. I found local clubs and I just trained with them, etc., kept myself fit and so on until I started university. And that's where I really started pushing myself towards professional basketball career. I was extremely lucky. We had a phenomenal team. And with that, things kind of moved in the right direction. And that's really the first thing I want you to think about when it comes to isolation. Why is it that you've been isolated? What happened in your life that isolated you from your loved ones? So I gave you my stories, from the point of view as a teenager, right? Things happened that completely, broke me out of my family completely and out of life, frankly. And I moved into a completely different country, started completely new life, etc. What do? And you have to have a mindset. And I know this is a really hard thing to do, but you need to have a mindset where the first question has to be, how do I get out of it? So as I said just now, the first tool that was available to me is sports. You need to figure out what is the tool that is available to you. Probably you love reading. So look for book clubs. You go to a local library. Probably you love yoga. Look for a local yoga club or get people like to get together in parks and stuff like that and do yoga. All sorts of different other activities. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, guys, I'm talking about the 1990s in my case. There was no such thing as social media. So for me, literally, I had to physically get my ass out of my flat and meet people somehow. But with social media, this is the good thing about social media, that you can actually find people to connect with wherever you are. But you need to have that intention. That's the first step. And it's always the hardest step. I know it is a really, really hard step. This is what we've all felt during the pandemic. It's like the first step is like, okay, it's accepting that the pandemic is over, that the lockdown is over, that now it's actually safe for us to get out. But there's something at the back of your mind that says like, but what if this and what if that? This is how your body works. It's like we are designed to prioritize comfort over struggles. And one of the things that I learned in professional sport, and this is the point I used to tell people when I used to coach martial arts actually, is that you need to teach yourself to be comfortable outside your comfort zone. Because this is how you become successful in life, guys, in whatever it is that you do. I absolutely had to push myself beyond my limits, because you don't do that by, sitting at home, eating pizza, watching TV all day. Yeah. But this is how comfort thing works. It's like, if the weather is horrible outside, you've got lovely fresh pizza in front of you, a bowl of popcorn and Netflix. Yeah, I can guarantee you the first thing comes to your mind is like, maybe I can exercise tomorrow and stuff like that. Right. And you might even feel good about yourself doing that. Oh, he's so comfortable. It feels nice. But guess what? Your comfort in this case is actually unhealthy. It's a lot healthier for you to go through that bad weather and to the gym and kick your ass in the gym. That's actually better for you. So this is something that you've got to accept. You need to teach yourself to be comfortable outside your comfort zone. Meaning then if you feel uncomfortable going out for whatever reason, make yourself go out. You have to do that. But in order to make yourself go out, you need to have an intention. Like I just said, find a club or just go out for a walk. You might meet somebody in the park or something, right? You don't even have to meet anybody. If you're an introvert, you don't have to meet anybody. Just go out, go to the shops. You have to be active. Don't just sit at home. This is something that people, without realizing it, like I said, you stay at home, you get into that comfort zone, and that comfort zone turns into a rabbit hole that you can't get yourself out of. And this is where my second part of the story, where basically a major event that could happen that could lead you towards depression. And interestingly, this is a very common thing in sports. One of the things that you guys probably don't know, that despite the fact that globally around 4% of the global population suffers from some form of mental health and depression, in professional sports, it's over 55%. So all of the amazing athletes that you see out there, not necessarily superstars, but even those superstars also suffer from mental health issues as well. But the thousands upon thousands of athletes from grassroots all the way to professional level suffer from severe mental health. And it tends to happen especially when your career ends, even if it's planned. You see, in my case, it wasn't planned. I had a nasty knee injury that completely ended my dreams. And it was horrible. It was horrible. I was forced into retirement when I was about 21. Imagine that. And the first thing came to my mind was like, my God, that's my entire childhood gone for nothing. Because you see, when you go down the road of becoming a professional athlete as a child, you don't have friendships. Like I said, I've made that sacrifice. I wanted it because I really wanted to be I wanted to be in the NBA. This is what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a professional basketball player. I came to the UK. My plan was that I would play in the UK, make my name, and try and move maybe to Spain, where basically they created some phenomenal players that have really strong connections with the NBA. And that was my plan. And of course, that never happened because I had a career-ending injury that just killed it all. Just like that. Just like that. The whole world around me collapsed. And if it weren't for, the amazing friends that I had around me at the time, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was there. Everybody was there for me. And they really supported me in so many different ways, trying to help me figure out what to do next. And this is a common thing in sports. Retired athletes, the experience that you have in sports, I can tell you nothing in the world can replace it. Even as an entrepreneur, I love what I do right now. It's nothing compared to being a pro athlete. Nothing comes even close. So when that ends, my goodness, it's horrible. And I had this conversation recently with a couple of athletes that I've met because of my connections. I mentioned in some of my previous podcasts that I am building connection with the UK Sports Institute, the institute behind the British Olympic team. I'm connecting with Loughborough University, which is one of the best universities in the world for sports science. Again, loads of Olympians go there. So I met people and ex-Olympians in there, and we have all these conversations. And again, I had similar conversations this week alongside the reports that I've mentioned that has come out. It literally brought all of these thoughts back to my mind that I felt that I wanted to make this episode. And in fact, this episode wasn't planned. I was planning to talk about something totally different because I think this is a really important point. It's a problem that we're facing and many young people are facing all over the world. I feel that it needs to be dealt with, and I don't think it's been talked enough. And I feel that, somebody in my position, it would be great to speak to you guys about this because I want to show you that it's normal. In a sense that you shouldn't be embarrassed, because some people feel embarrassed to say that they're lonely and they don't want to reach out to anybody. I just want to say to you that you're not alone, guys. So many people feel that. And even professional athletes, people that tend to get revered. But these guys are so strong, they're so fit, they've got it all. Man, like I said, 55% of athletes suffer from a form of mental health. Yeah. So for me, again, what was the strategy? Which kind of brings me to the second point in terms of once you have the intention, and let's say the intention kind of works really well. So in my case, basketball was the intention and it works really well. And then something happens and it just destroys it all. Then what? Then you have to start thinking about the strategy. So in my case, of course, it was such an abrupt end that I just literally didn't know what to do. Now, again, at the time, I was already studying and finishing my biomedical science degree. And one of the things that my wife and girlfriend at the time said to me that, you're very competitive by nature. I am very, very competitive. Yeah, I mean, you don't become good at sports if you're not super competitive. And she said, like, that was my energy. That was who I am. And she said, you need to find a way for you to use that competitiveness in something else that is not sports related. And I'm like, as an entrepreneur. She's like, as an entrepreneur. And I was like, you know what? Bring it on. I'll do this. So I kind of turned that into a task, into a mission that I want to become an entrepreneur. And the problem is that I've never been an entrepreneur. I knew nothing about business. I was just a scientist. But also, even though I already started using AI, but not developing AI, but using AI at a very high level for decoding animal genomes, etc. So I've discovered the capabilities of AI models and how powerful they are. And I thought, okay, I need another degree, like a master's degree or something like that, where I can study computer science, information systems, so I can get my head around how these things actually work properly to see if I can actually do it. And I did it. Then I became an entrepreneur and boom, here I am. But as is the case with any major change, as I said at the beginning, I almost suffered from loneliness yet again, because what happens when your career ends in sports? Literally everything just ends. Like I said, it's such a crazy abrupt end. Whatever players that you were connected with, your teammates, whatever, it just all just vanishes because they're not really necessarily your friends. I mean, they were good guys. I mean, I got along really well with everybody, but they were not my friends. You know what I'm saying? And that is a very common thing in sports. Like not every player, you see all these teams, they celebrate, they hug each other and stuff, but they're not actually friends. In fact, there's a lot of politics as well amongst players that you don't see on camera. It's all behind closed doors. For me, again, that was like a new start, a major new start for me in the world of business, in a world that I know nothing about. I know nobody. We're talking here about 2002. So all these amazing accelerators that you see today and all these incubators, whatever, none of that was around. So again, I was on my own. I was like, okay, what the hell do I do? So again, my intention was I had to get out there and find people. So I had to start, okay, who can help me with this? Thankfully, my university had an incubation program for their graduates if they want to become entrepreneurs. I joined that, and that really set the pace for me to where I am today, 20 years on. Loads of universities do the same. So in this case, basically, I'm talking about major career change, because sometimes you might feel isolated at work. So even though, yes, you are going out, you are meeting people, you are talking to people, but they're not your friends. They're nobodies to you. And you feel isolated at work. I hear a lot of stories about people feeling isolated at work and they feel that they just don't, they don't belong there, but you really need the job. You need the money. I fully understand that. But unfortunately, you've got to make the change. So you see, in my case, the change was abrupt, but changing your situation, which is the second thing I'm talking about, changing your situation is something that has to be part of your strategy, because you need to ask yourself, how did you get here? Because everything that happened so far, like what I've talked about in terms of my 17-year-old self and my sporting career, and that was not really a plan. It just, things just happened. And that's life. Things just also happen, right? But if you say started a job, you're really happy and you're like, okay, let's say you work for a major company, a major tech company, you're really, really looking forward to it. And you started the work, but you're not getting along with anybody. You hate it. I've heard so many stories that people just simply say, you know what, I don't know what to do. And you feel stuck. Change. You have to have that intention to change. Yes, change is scary, but you've got to change. Yes, you might say, well, look, it was hard for me to get that job. I need the money. I understand that. But then you have to then think about your mental health. You need to figure this one out. Perhaps you've got experience and you can become an entrepreneur. Like for me, like I said, being an entrepreneur wasn't really a plan. My plan was to be in the NBA and then become something after I retire and so on, to make all that money or whatever. That was my plan. So I had to then figure out, okay, what is it that made me really, really tick? competitiveness. I love competition. I love competition. And the most competitive thing, I suppose, after sports is being an entrepreneur, especially in tech. It's fiercely competitive. I love it. I love it. Right? I love being punched in the face, but I punch back as well. Okay? So you need to see what are the things that really make you excited and start a business around that. Look for the opportunities. Speak to your university if you're a university graduate. There are loads of, again, with social media, LinkedIn, connect with people. You can do that. Absolutely, you can do that. So if you feel that there's change needed in your life, make it happen. Yes, there's a huge risk involved. Me becoming an entrepreneur was a massive risk because I was already building, a potential career in biomedical science. Of course, the whole thing with the basketball just ended abruptly, but I had biomedical science. So I kind of decided to work a little bit as a biomedical scientist so I can get fully qualified, because in medicine, you don't just get the certificate from your university. You actually have to work in healthcare to fully qualify as, say if you're a doctor, grade 1 doctor. In my case, as a biomedical scientist, grade 1 biomedical scientist. So it's official, right? And I did all of that. It was really cool. But ultimately, I knew that I wanted to change. Change was necessary. You've got to do that. You have to be very proactive. You got to do that. Absolutely 100%. Now, the third step you need to consider, which in my opinion is the easiest step, is to keep yourself out of isolation, especially today where remote work is really a popular idea. But the problem with remote work is that you're going to experience the same problem that we've all experienced during lockdown. You get into that comfort zone. Again, I don't know about you, but when I meet people for the first time, say virtually on Zoom or something like that, and let's say I've never met them face to face, but let's say we've had multiple conversations virtually and we had great time talking about all sorts of different topics or whatever. But then when I meet them face to face, it feels weird. I don't know. Do you guys feel the same? I don't know. Comment below. Tell me if you feel the same thing sometimes. But it feels awkward. That barrier that I talked about before. And it's like, I don't know why. It's in my head. And the strategy that I tend to use straight away is that I try to remember the things that we have in common. Let's say if, for example, the person that I met also plays basketball occasionally and so on. And I'll say, so how's your basketball? Have you been playing recently and stuff like that? So kind of try to break the ice. And then very quickly, it just comes back, all the conversations that we had. And it's like, yeah, of course, I know this guy very, very well, right? But there's something about face-to-face meetings that can never be replaced digitally. Now, I know people in the world of tech, they try to kind of encourage you that you use AI and all these things. And of course, I'm an AI entrepreneur. I'm a tech entrepreneur. I am encouraging you to use AI as a tool. But one of the key reasons what we're seeing there's a massive rise of loneliness, especially amongst young people, is the fact that people are over-reliant on digital technologies to stay in touch with people. So even though you'll be like, okay, I've spoken to that guy over or that colleague, for example, on Zoom, so that's it. That you need to try and actually meet people face to face. That is so important. Because, for example, even though my company, we are fully remote. We've always been remote. In fact, I've been working on the idea of remote work before it became a thing, way before the pandemic. And we just figured it out. The way we tend to do it is like we all go away, do our thing. We spread around the world and do the projects, etc. But we always make the effort to meet up as regularly as we possibly can. Okay? That's so important. There's something about that physical connection between humans that absolutely improves your mental health in a big way. But the problem that we have today with AI, and I've got a couple of reports I want to share with you of how it literally drags you down into that isolation. Even though you're working, you might be happy with the job that you're doing. You might be happy with the company. You might be happy with the people that you've met. But the only problem is that you only met them virtually. That's actually a form of loneliness as well, without you realizing it. You might think, oh, Tim, that's not loneliness. Well, yeah, go and meet them face to face and tell me how you feel after that, right? At the beginning, you're going to feel really weird. That's why I make a lot of effort to go and meet people face to face. So yes, most of the time I have virtual meetings because my time is very limited, etc. But I ultimately always aim to meet that person face to face at some point. Because this research paper that I want to share with you, and again, link in the description below, actually highlights one of the biggest problems that we see amongst young people who are suffering from isolation and loneliness, and the impact of AI in making it even worse. The title of the article is that teens are forming intense relationships with AI entities and parents have no idea. The findings of the research illustrate a stark disconnect between the two demographics, the parents and the children. Overall, the parents seem to be under the impression that their kids used AI chatbots mainly as a search engine or as a homework tool. But in reality, the teenagers primarily said they use chatbots for therapeutic purposes or for emotional support. When having a virtual friend wasn't enough, some even turned to technology to fulfill romantic and even sexual desires. And that's a very big problem. This is the issue that we're seeing. And this is the issue, in fact, that we're seeing with the manosphere as well. It's like how they try to attract young people towards the idea of having a community. Remember what I said at the beginning, that you need to try and find to talk to somebody, try to connect with people. They take advantage of that. This is how radicalization works in so many different other areas as well, not just the manosphere, but even we've seen that in terrorism, for example, right? We've seen that with the far-right groups. We've seen that in so many other horrific situations where vulnerable teenagers get fallen into the traps of these people, right? And AI is actually kind of making it worse. Again, hence, it's so important as a parent not to do what my parents did. Again, my parents had good intentions, believe it or not. I believe that. But as parents, you need to be absolutely fully engaged with your children and try not to say, well, actually, yeah, go and use AI, go use your iPad and stuff. We've all done it. Look, I've done that the same with my kids. But as a tech person, actually, I knew how to basically control their access to technology. I wanted them to learn and benefit from it, but also understand how it works and why they should not use it too much, why they should go out more, why they should meet with other kids and play with other kids a lot more. And so far, they're doing a great job, in fact, and they understand technology really, really well. So it's important that parents engage 100%. Try to encourage your kids to go out there and do stuff. I know maybe you're struggling, maybe you get into a lot of arguments as a result of that, but you know what? If you have to force them, because it's really important. You have to have the ability from a very young age to figure your way out of the situation that you're in, rather than get yourself into that comfort zone. So, as a way of ending this, like I said, I just wanted to share my story really, really quickly. I felt this is just a very short episode that I wanted to do because it's a problem that is growing. It is really growing badly all over the world, as I said earlier. So the 3 strategies. So first, understand why you ended up in that situation. What event that made you feel isolated or even made you physically isolated. But then once you identify that, the second step, have an intention to get yourself out of it by identifying some kind of route. So like I said, when I was 17, for me, it was basketball. It could be anything for you. Anything. Whatever it is that you love doing. It could be sports, just walking, I don't know, book clubs, whatever. Like you figure it out, right? Something that you enjoy, something that you love. Like I said, we've got social media for a reason. Use social media for that. There are loads of amazing ways that you can connect with people locally, wherever you are. So have that intent to find a way out, okay? And the third thing is to stay out, meaning that yes, take advantage of the AI models, take advantage of Zoom, remote work or whatever, but don't use it as your normal way of doing things. No, it's a complementary way of doing it. Perhaps, yeah, you can probably spend most of your time working remotely, whatever, but aim to go out there and meet with your colleagues and talk to your colleagues or talk with your clients face to face as much as you possibly can. Or as the case with me, if you own a business, go to events. I go to a lot of local events. Right? I go to London, obviously, all of the major events. I get invited to speak, so I also speak or whatever. You know, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. It's entirely up to you. But the point I'm making is that go to as many events as you possibly can, whether it's related to your work or something else. If you've got local theaters, like I go to a lot of my local theaters, it's not the West End, but hey, it's still great place. I get to meet people. It's amazing. It's cool. Just do it. Make yourself go out and meet people. So it's all about you taking control. I know it's not easy, but I've been there and it's something that you have to do. If you need help with that, then get help. Speak to some of your friends, your family, speak to your therapist, speak to your doctor. There are many ways that you can share this with somebody. But the key point I have to make here, you are not alone. Don't be embarrassed about it. Like I said, everybody has it. I had it. Even professional athletes have it, and we had it. We tend to get it at the worst possible way, I think, mentally as well. As I said, 55%, man. That's a lot. That's a lot of athletes. But you're not alone. Don't be embarrassed. There will be idiots out there that are going to be making jokes about it, but, ignore them. They're idiots. You don't need to worry about them, right? Worry about yourself. Just know that we are all on the same boat here, okay? You just have to have the intent to make change following those 3 steps that I've highlighted. So if you've suffered it as well and you actually found a way out and you want to add to this conversation, please feel free to comment below. Give me your ideas. Tell me how you managed your isolation and loneliness if you've been through anything like that. share with us, because I think this is an important topic that we need to talk about, and I will come back to it, and I will bring in experts as usual to discuss this issue. But make sure you check all of the citations that I've got below. I've titled them so you know what is what, and you can read it for yourself. But yes, it's a big problem, but I really think that we can solve it if we all openly discuss it and basically combat it together. My friends, stay safe, look after yourself, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Peace.